everyone, and welcome to Thursday Live Lesson. My name is Aldrine Guerrero, joined by these fine gentlemen. Mr. Aaron, the voice, Nakamura. Say what's up, Aaron.
What's up?
Mr. Kahai, the legend, Fergan. Say what's up, Kahai.
What's up?
And returning for like the 100th time. How many times has it been? It's been a lot. Oh, Mr. Mike. Magic Mike. Oh, I was like, wait, what is it? What is the thing? Magic Mike. Oh, no. Hey, thanks for joining us again, Mike. Everyone. Hey, how about a round of applause? So,
Don't
Thursday
worry, man.
Live
Me and my
Lesson.
chicken nuggets are good.
All good. You're wearing the right shirt for it. Wearing the right shirt. You got that Szechuan sauce with it, too?
I wish
Oh, you ate all of it. Because you stockpiled, didn't you?
I did.
While everyone was hoarding toilet paper and Lysol and stuff, you were
Mushu sauce.
Yeah.
Well, they had it for like, let's put it this way. They had it for about a month.
Yeah.
I probably bought a 20-piece chicken McNugget every third day. They give you four, and it would only take me 2 to get through it.
Yeah.
So I would stockpile 2 every time. I eventually had this huge thing of it, and then as soon as they stopped producing it, I just started eating them, and then with another.
Couldn't you just like ask them to buy the things separately? Like
I actually did. They wouldn't do it.
Oh yeah. Oh, you gotta buy something.
You have to buy the actual McNugget. I was like, what does a case of them cost? What does a case of these things cost?
Or beat up a guy in the truck in the back. All right.
Yeah,
anyway,
I asked and they said, no. No, we can't do that.
So Thursday Live Lesson is a place where you guys can ask us questions, ukulele questions, Szechuan sauce questions, whatever it may be. You guys can ask us anything that you want, I guess. We're guys from Ukulele on the Ground. Ukulele is our forte, but you can ask us basically anything, and we try to answer them as best as we can. I answer them as best as I can. These guys ready here will put in their 2 cents, and I will come up with a super answer for you. So lay it on me, gentlemen. Here we go. Here's our first question. Kahai.
Yeah. So I was like saving this question specifically for when Mike was on.
Saving all the questions for Mike.
yeah. Because another Mike asked, how can he get started with learning jazz chords and jazz standard songs?
Yeah, Mike is the Yaz master.
Yes, guy. Well, jazz. Okay, so jazz chords. If you go back through the podcast, you'll try and look up anything we've ever done on how to build chords, meaning chord extensions, starting off with a simple triadic chord, then 7s, then 9s, 11s, 13s. Now, specific voicings for that is going to be a little bit is going to be a little bit more depending on the instrument that you play. For certain instruments, you don't really you need to know how the chord is constructed, but you're never really going to play them as a chord, i.e. if you're a bass player. I can play jazz chords on my bass, but in a realistic setting, you're very rarely ever called to do that. If you're a guitarist, there is a enormous swath of educational materials out there for you. The one thing I would tell anybody is learn the basics of creating a chord voicing, which to me is you need to include the 3rd note and the 7th note of the chord. Anything after that is color or tension that you want to put into it. So if you brought me 5 jazz guitarists and say, make me a C7 chord, you're probably going to get 5 different versions of that chord. And that's going to be very dependent on the style of jazz they play. For instance, someone who plays Benny Goodman big band style jazz is going to play a very different voicing than someone who plays Miles Davis 1970s fusion, Fizz the Kilimanjaro fusion jazz. So because of that, it's going to kind of depend on your own ear and where you want to go. As for learning jazz standards, the one thing I would start with is actually learning forms, not necessarily specific songs. If you learn forms and how the form works, then it's a lot easier because then everything seems to fit itself into that framework already. For example, if you are playing, your average pop song, you're talking about having an intro, a first verse, possibly a pre-chorus or the chorus, second verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, and out. Now, not every song obviously falls into that, but a lot of them do. And with jazz music, it's pretty much the same way. The standard form is what they call an AABA form. And what that would mean is it's 32 bars, 32 measures, broken into 4 sections of 8. And so the chords would be as the thing goes, AABA. So the first 8 bars has a chord structure. It's repeated in the second 8 bars. And then the B section comes, which is usually considered the bridge, and that's 8 bars. And then you recapitulate it for 8 more bars of the first chord progression, and then you start all over again. I would probably tell you about 75 to 80% of most things we consider to be jazz standards are written in that format, especially anything that came from, say, before the 70s, 60s, and earlier are pretty much all going to be in that form. Because that, before the verse, chorus format, was actually the format that most composers of pop Broadway used to create their songs. So if you memorize that, it becomes a lot easier.
This is kind of going directly against what you said, like not to learn songs, but can you give some songs that would be an example of like that they should look at for that kind of stuff?
Okay. I don't think that really goes against it, meaning that if they're trying to learn what it's 2 things. If you're trying to learn the forms of jazz, then no specific song is necessary. Okay. But to what you're asking, are there songs? Do you really mean like are there songs that pretty much everybody knows?
Or like just what are some good songs to learn? I guess to get that idea that you were saying, like to learn forms.
To
instead.
Learn the forms. Okay. Yeah. A couple songs that everybody seems to know. All the Things You Are by Jerome Kern. How High the Moon? Aldrine, I think, remembers that one. We played it in Kahai Jazz Band.
I'm sure we did. I'm sure I played it before. I played lots of songs. I don't remember most of them.
Yeah. So All the Things You Are, How High the Moon, Blue Bossa. That's a pretty good one because it's really easy. Yeah. Let's see. Any song also, speaking of a different song that would be very jazzy in blues form, anything using the blues, so say things like bird blues, Bird named after Charlie Parker, that would be definitely a good one to learn. And the other set of changes that everybody seems to know in jazz is the changes to I Got Rhythm. If anybody knows that song, it's an old song that George Gershwin wrote. And as was the custom with a lot of jazz at the time, what they would do is they would take chord structures they liked and they would just write a new melody over it. And basically what they were doing was it was a way for them to keep playing the chords they liked to be able to do solos, but at the same time, not have to play the same melody over and over and over again. So you can learn I Got Rhythm because that's a great song. Other songs like that are Oleo by Sonny Rollins. Gosh, it's hard to think like right off the top of my head, but there's literally like The Theme by Miles Davis. That's another one. And I mean, if you learn those 3, basically, like the AABA form, the jazz blues form, and then Tenor Madness. That's a jazz blues song I was thinking about. And the I Got Rhythm changes. If you hear any jazzer ever say, "Oh, let's play rhythm changes," that's what they're talking about. So, because I remember when I was just getting into jazz in high school, I hung out with them, and they would say, "Oh, we'll just play rhythm changes," and I'm going,
"Yeah."
Are we does that mean we're just playing a rhythm and changing it? What are we doing? I don't know.
I like going from 4/4 to 3/4. I like all the rhythms. 5/4, 4/4. Give me anything.
There's a ton of songs that'll do that to you too. For anybody, by the way, for any of you who are looking to get into jazz, A great easy resource that is also free is go to jazzbooks.com. It's the company run by a guy named Jamie Abersold. If you've played jazz for a while, you definitely know who this guy is. He started off in the 60s, I want to say, 60s, 70s. And what he realized was he was at a camp teaching jazz, and the kids had no real way to practice. Some of the kids coming to his camp didn't have other people around them to play. So what he did was he went to a studio and just recorded him. He played piano, got a bass player and a drummer, and they would just play the chord changes to these songs. Just repeat. And he would sell them as records with a book that had all the melodies. So it was something that allowed you to play the melody and play some solos, work on what you were doing, and play the out and everything like that. And it was a way for you to practice that stuff if you weren't in a situation where you could easily get together with a piano, bass, and drums. And, you know, here he is like 40, 50 years later. He still runs jazz camps. He has 200 something play along books of that nature. But if you go to his site, he has something called the Red Book, which is free. Actually, funny. I actually just got another. Looks like this. Of course, I have them. And what it is it's a free. So you can request this for free.
Oh, cool.
They'll just send it to you. Matter of fact, almost every year I ever taught jazz, I taught the after-school jazz band at Kahai. I would always call them up and say, hey, could you send me about 50 of these? And I would just hand it out to all the kids.
Oh.
And inside is, you know, some talking about, you know, scales, chords, what the different chord symbols mean, things like that. You know, it actually has some work in it for you so you can show that you're learning, you know, kind of to solidify it in your head. For those who play chordal instruments, it actually has how do you construct jazzy sounding chords.
Nice.
Cool.
And also in here is certain things like, you know, a short list of bebop players. So these are guys you can, you know, go to YouTube and check these guys out because these are the guys who basically created the language that you're trying to learn.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, a lot of basic theory stuff for free. It's an awesome thing.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, and you don't actually, and the coolest thing about Jamie's site is you actually don't even have to buy anything to get one of these. He's so invested in jazz education that if you go to the website and simply request one of these, they'll mail you one for free.
Well, we'll definitely put a link to it in the description and everything.
Jazzbooks.com.
Yeah.
So so Michael, if you're looking to get into jazz as a beginning, I would definitely say start there. Obviously this is ukulele, so we always have to plug this because we were talking about him before. Also, if you're wanting to learn how to play jazz on ukulele, go look at Abe Lagrimus's book.
That's a man with friends.
Wrote the book on jazz ukulele.
Do we really need to promote
he literally
Abe?
did.
Do we really need to promote Abe anymore? Talk about him so much.
I mean, after they watch that video, they're probably going to say, well, how did he do that?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm saying that.
Yeah.
But well,
since we're talking about this, Aldrine, I loved your thumb thing. That's what I was going to tell you in the video.
What thumb thing?
So there was a part in there where you were doing like a tremolo with your thumb. That was kind of like this.
So we're talking about we just posted on Instagram a video of Aldrine, Abe, and Kalei playing Breezin', and they all took solos, just like improv, kind of right off the top of the head, kind of stuff. And so check it out on our Instagram. Yeah, Uke Underground Instagram. Yeah,
it's well worth checking out, especially since I guess, I mean, you and Kalei have a more similar style than you and Abe do.
Yeah.
But yours and his style are still very different. You know, it's very personal, personal to you. So you don't often get a chance in a very intimate kind of situation like that to see three guys who can really play and do their thing in a way that you can kind of check it out like that. You don't get that.
It was kind of cool because it was during the retreat. So like, you know, in the retreat, like Kalei and I have been, were the teachers for that retreat, and we've been kind of teaching things. It's a lot of like, okay, we'll do, you know, like, we'll do island style or whatever, you know, like, I mean, it's not just that we dive, you know, pretty deep into the songs and whatnot. But then like these, you know, these two teachers that you spent like all weekend with, all of a sudden, like, you know, like we take off like all the shackles and we can just do whatever we want, and then people are like, well, I didn't realize, like, you know, they were that good, you know. It was a really cool moment, like at the retreat, where we just kind of let go. We, you know, we took off all the weighted vests and the you know, we just went Rockley out. Exactly, Rockley weights, baby, it's off. And just we just went, and it was really cool because it was three different very distinct styles, you know, where Kalei is very technically gifted, you know, like he really knows his way around the fretboard. He knows how to like play as clean and as accurate as possible. And then you got a guy like Abe, who's, you know, whose knowledge of like jazz and chords and music in general, not even just jazz, like he was just straighten up, like, you know, like being an encyclopedia, like for me and Abe, you know what I mean? Like he just kind of took us on a journey from like something really basic into just like a whole new world, you know, like I mean, like with his Arabic scales, it was kind of crazy. And
I think he said,
and only
you
if he
and
knew Jay Shimabukuro videos better, he would have wiped it completely.
What you say, Guy?
I think he said that, like you were saying that you and Abe, but Abe was the one that was teaching you and Kalei. That's what you're saying, or like kind of opened up you and Kalei to this new idea.
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, you know, like my my style is very very like melodic and stuff. Like, so as I was kind of doing my solo, I'm kind of thinking of melodies to kind of to make sense of what I'm, you know, what I'm playing, not just kind of playing notes and stuff. It's still like it's three different approaches to it. So it was one of the videos that I was most excited for. I mean, one, because I was a part of it, you know, like two, it's something that like that just kind of happens like spontaneously. It's not something that you plan. It's like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then you're gonna do that, and then he's gonna do this, okay, like, and then let's go, you know, like it's not something that you plan. It's just something that just kind of happens. And like that was, you know, there was like 2 or 3 songs even before we played that song. That's kind of like the last song that we played together. And you know, it's just us just kind of feeling it out, and even those songs like had some magic in them, you know. But then it was like I wanted to really, really showcase those dudes. So I'm like, you know what will really showcase these guys? Breezing. And we played it, and it was just exactly what I thought would happen. It's just kind of magic, you know, magic happened. It was really, really, really cool. And for those of you folks who watched it, Mike is talking about my my very rubbery finger. Like that's kind of my own thing. I always tell people
thumb tremolo.
Yeah, it's like an independent thumb tremolo.
Yeah.
So it's like it's something that I've never seen anybody else do. But it's like I've gotten so used to like picking with my thumb that I can actually do a tremolo without anchoring any of my fingers. Like I just kind of hold it, and this becomes like its own thing. And it's pretty accurate. I don't use it a lot, but it's one of those, you know, like, hey, if they're gonna bear their fags, like, I gotta show my fags as well, you know, like it's that kind of moment, like, and you can kind of tell that, like, you know, that each one of us is just like, oh yeah, that's really cool. Oh, that's really cool. It wasn't more, maybe fangs not, you know, not the thing, but it's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna do this. This is something that, you know, like that I haven't heard in this song yet, and it's kind of like really, really upping, you know, like upping the next person. That's like what Cutting Heads is all about. And then we get to Abe, where he's like, you know, I'm tired of like minor scales. Like I'm tired of this minor scale stuff. And he just kind of went off, and it's really cool, kind of, you know, kind of made me wish that maybe maybe I should take lessons from Abe. And he is. You know what? Just so since we're promoting our friends and stuff, Abe is actually offering private lessons. Like I saw on his Facebook, he just announced it this past weekend, or last week sometime, that he is taking private students. So, you know, I don't know what his premium, you know, charge is, but it's gonna be up there. And a bunch of ukulele players are now you know, offering your private lessons. And here too, on, you know, if you guys have not booked your private lessons with me yet, I can give you guys that. But definitely Abe, you know, I guess as a musician, it's kind of like these times are kind of tough. So let's support our friends and maybe get a lesson or two from him.
I think talking about lessons, I think our May lessons are all booked up already too.
Oh, snap.
So yeah, we'll probably open up our June lessons at this point too. Yeah.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to add before we move on and stuff. When I wanted to pick up jazz, because I could kind of play like jazz light, you know, like, and but like kind of jamming with Mike again is one of the things that re-sparked jazz and really made me want to like pursue it again, to understand the things that we were playing. And I was playing with some jazz killers actually in that little combo that we had. Like, why don't you introduce the people that we were playing? Like, why don't you tell them about the musicians and what, you know, their expertise were?
Well, I would say it was a pretty diverse group of people.
Yeah, it was stacked.
I mean, really, it was the one person I think he's talking about more than anybody is our buddy Willie Espiritu.
and Willie, too, man. I'm just okay. Go ahead. Yeah, Will.
You know, Willie's a guitarist that I've often said this, is that I think that especially old school Hawaiian musicians are probably the most versatile guys you will ever find in your life. Mm-hmm. I think most of those guys who came up in that era, especially through like the 70s and the 80s, incredible versatility, you know, and being that, because Hawaii is a tourist place, you never really know what people are going to ask for. You know, Aldrine has told the story about going to Chicago and there's this amazing blues band and a blues club. I very much doubt anybody ever walked into that club and say, "Hey, do you think you guys could play, you know, Margaritaville for me?"
I guess, yeah.
They'd probably get beat up.
Yeah.
But as anybody who's ever worked in Hawaii could tell you, that request comes. That request comes right next to, can you play Tiny Bubbles? Can you play My Little Grass Shack? At the same time, somebody else will walk in the door and say, "Hey, can you play Ventura Highway by America?" Or can you play Going to California by Led Zeppelin? Mm-hmm. These are all things.
And they'd have to know it. Yeah.
And you have to know it.
Yeah.
You know? So I think one of the things that he was talking about was, you know, Willie has the ability to just play as a, you know, what we were doing was playing a jazzy Hawaiian luau type. That was kind of the idea of the group. And of course, when we're playing, you know, Hawaiian music, well, he was playing Hawaiian music. But he was also adding in, you know, and that's, I think, one of the first things I saw you watching him, because he was playing these Hawaiian songs, but then throwing in just that one jazzy note that's like, you know, you're like, I have played this song a million times and I have never heard someone play that C chord like that. How did you do that? And he was like, of course, one of the interesting things with guys like that is they can do it, but they can't always explain it necessarily. They just learned it. Their ears are so finely tuned that it's just like they hear that a little bit more jazzy, a little bit more dissonant note, and they add that in because it adds that wonderful tension that's so characteristic of jazz. And then if you ask them about, like, well, which one? What note? He said, "No, you play that." It's like, that one.
I gotta figure it out,
man.
You know, and you know, besides him, there was Rhoda, our leader.
Rhoda's also a well-traveled musician too.
You know, Japan, all over the mainland, Vegas. I mean, she's in, and you know what Rhoda's really good at.
She's a singer. Rhoda Libre. She's a singer. Yeah.
The singer, ukulele player, plays at Smith's Tropical Paradise, plays all over the place, really. And the thing she's really good at is envisioning a show, you know. And with her, one of the nice things is that despite the fact that our show was supposed to be a hula show, a luau show, she immediately did not say, okay, well, we're just going to play all these typical Hawaiian songs you're going to see at every luau. You know, she wants to start with
like Night in Tunisia. Like we started with that. It's like, what the heck is this song?
What kind of luau are we playing?
Con stuff. It was amazing. Like I got really introduced to like all these new things, and even just that one show we had with the keyboard player. He's also an amazing musician.
Hank.
Yeah, Hank is also great. Like they're all. I was hanging with like some jazz killers that I didn't even I didn't realize. Like I was in shark infested waters. I thought I was pretty good. And I'm like, no, I should really just sit down and learn from these guys.
Hank Curtis, he is the music director over at All Saints Church here on Kauai, and he's not very often will you see those guys that you watch the movie about, like he was a child genius and did this. Hank really is kind of that. In the sense that, he made his debut playing with the San Diego Symphony as a child piano soloist when he was like 9 or 10.
What?
Okay, well, what I ultimately wanted to lead this to is because I was in those Shark Festival, I was like, I need to like up my jazz game and stuff. And here comes Mike, with the book, exactly the book that I needed, which is it was a fake book that got, I've always wanted a fake book, but then Mike got me this nice kind of carry on, like what exactly was it, Mike?
It was
the tiny fake book.
Is this one?
Yeah, the real book. Sorry, not fake, but the real book. There is a fake book.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So here's the interesting part. The term fake book and real book actually come from the same place.
Can you, Mike? Can you show that again? Because the camera wasn't on you. So.
Yeah, I think we've shown this book before on the show too.
This is actually made by Hal Leonard now, and if you look inside, it's basically just all these tunes and the chords and the melodies.
That's how I upped my game. Like I took that, that gift that Mike gave me, and I just learned, like I just randomly turned to a page and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen to that, to the recording, and then I'm just gonna try to play what I know. And if I run across a chord that I didn't recognize, I'm like, okay, cool. Well, instead of going to like the chord finder or whatever, I'm like, okay, how do I build that chord? I'm like, okay, I know what E is, like I know what a 13 is, I know what a flat 9, like, so how do I make an E major 7 flat 5 or whatever? It's like, okay, cool, here's my E, here's the major 7, and there's the flat 5. So like, which one of these notes do I keep and which one do I throw away? Because my 4 strings can't handle all those notes, So it was really cool to just kind of experiment with things, and instead of like trying to look at like a chord finder, like I said, and sometimes I would, just to kind of double check my work. But that's really what like kind of leveled me up as a musician. And then all the things that I was doing for the show, for the jazz luau show, I tried to like kind of bring over to like my own show, like trying out these kind of new voicings and chords, and that's kind of how I leveled up, with that book. So, I thought you were going to talk about that book, but the red book is amazing. I'm glad you mentioned the red book, but also don't forget that real book. The real book is also great.
Well, the better part about the red book is that it actually talks a lot about the foundational things. So for someone who doesn't actually know how to construct a chord, that information is in there. Like if you said like a certain scale, okay, so if you have this chord, what scale goes with that? The red book is what will tell you that type of stuff. This book is where you would actually put that into practice. It's where you would actually learn how to use it in a real song situation rather than just running a scale up and down,
Yeah. Because I mean, like Rhoda would just be like, "Okay, we're gonna play Orange Colored Sky." I was like, "I've never heard that song before," and I'm like, "Wow, that's a lot of chords." Like,
that song was a lot of chords.
I gotta take this home. Like, okay, cool, 4, 3, 2. Like, oh,
and then she wanted it in like 4 different keys too. She had,
I'm like, exactly.
Like 3 weeks to decide which key we were gonna do it in.
Oh my gosh, it was really just I was thrown in like shark infested water because you guys could all do that because they're like, oh yeah, I know orange colored sky. Like, what key do you want it? And I'm like, oh, I can't even play it at this key that like like that as written, and I have to like sight read and change the
transpose.
key. Yeah, transpose at the same time. I'm like,
on the fly.
I am really out of my element. Like, where's Abe?
Well,
oh, actually, so for those nerds, I'll tell you the quick story about this. So most of you know what the Berklee College of Music is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and for those of you that don't, it's a school in Boston. It's basically, if you play jazz, it's the biggest school in the country. A lot of big names have gone. So where this started was in the 1960s. Up until that point, if you wanted to learn a tune, you probably weren't going to find it written down somewhere. So you either have to transcribe it off the record, or you have to find the guy who wrote the tune in the first place
and ask them what chords he was using.
Yes, exactly. now, and there's a very famous story. Oh gosh, what was it? It was Miles Davis. There's a tune called Confirmation. It's a real famous bebop tune. And he said so he wrote this tune, and the night he played it for the first time, the next morning, he was sleeping in bed, and at 7:30 in the morning, he hears a frantic knock on his door. And he's like, who is waking me up? Because he just played till like 4 in the morning. Mm-hmm. Opens the door pretty mad, and it's J.J. Johnson, was probably one of the world's greatest trombonists, and one other guy who I can't remember. And they're both holding pieces of paper in their hand. and they're like, he's like, what do you want? And he's like, Miles, what's the chord you use in the 18 in the 7th bar confirmation? Is it this rhythm? Is it this rhythm? So what they'd done was they had watched. So back in those days, jazz musicians would play for like a long time. Like Aldrine does a 2-hour set, but they basically set's an hour, right? These guys would do like 6 sets a night kind of deal. And so in order to get the band up to speed, they would play certain songs every set because it was new. Mm-hmm. So J.J. Johnson and this other guy had come and heard like the second set where they played it, and they were like, what is this tune? And they immediately ran out, got music sheet paper, and they spent the next 4 sets trying to write down everything they could remember.
Amazing.
And that means in real time trying to transcribe a melody you've never heard before over chords that you don't know what they are or what key it's in or anything. And they were so close. Actually, Miles said they were both close. They were both about 10% away from actually being 100% correct on the chart.
Why didn't they just use their iPhones and just
yeah, Shazam.
I will say this.
Guitar,
actually, a really interesting one. Because speaking of Shazam, when we were all together at the retreat and you were doing the Jake challenge,
yeah,
there was somebody in the back trying to Shazam every tune you were doing.
Yeah,
he was just like, I don't know if you saw him. He was like in the back doing that, but because it was a live, because they were all like live videos, the Shazam was just like not having it.
Yeah, and they're short clips.
Beating Shazam in that game, see?
So the story was that in the 60s, a bunch of students at Berklee had all written charts out for tunes they want to learn. And they all thought, what if we just start trading? And they thought, this could make a very cool book. So that's why if you look at these books, they're all basically old hand scribbled looking, because the original fake books were all hand scribbled. They were handwritten. And basically it was an underground thing that existed at Berklee for about 10 years before anybody else got into it. And actually until the 90s, you couldn't buy one of these legally. You couldn't. The only way you could have actually gotten one of so a fake book for you, if you don't play any gigs, a fake book is a book we carry around so that if we don't know a song, we can fake it. And those had existed before that. But if you have a few hundred of the best jazz musicians young jazz musicians in the country all working together to create accurate charts for something, it's probably going to be a lot more correct than the guy who plays organ for his church trying to like scribble something out that he's never heard before.
Yeah.
So
it was like the first like really crowdsourced jazz book.
It kind of was.
Yeah.
It kind of was.
Yeah.
You would
the
have
ultimate guitar for
and they would stuck it all together. And because it was more accurate than most other things, that's why this one is called The Real Book. Because according for them, you were playing the real version of the song, not the fake version that somebody else had, maybe kind of figured out. And even today, you can still see that. Go to like musicnotes.com, call up one song, and see how many different versions there are. Different rhythms, different keys, different chords.
That gives me an idea. I should like ring up like 10 of the best uke players, and we should just make an ukulele real book.
You know what? Well, that's the thing. That's the one thing I don't like about Ultimate Guitar is that think of a popular song and then go look for that on Ultimate Guitar and see how many versions there are. Like
the fakest fake book.
and the thing is, of course, everybody who contributed one, they did their best.
Yeah.
They did everything they could. They worked on it, but there are certain chords that sound like other chords. It just happens. And if you're not used to hearing certain things, for instance, say a C7 or a C9, if you're not really used to hearing those things, you can easily mistake one for the other or not recognize that at all and just write it as a C chord. So if you and the guys ever got together and did that, that would be pretty incredible.
Who's saying that there isn't already being made? That just wasn't invited.
But I think Adam Neely tells like a good story where he said like at one point, when he was in college, everybody's like, oh, get the real book or get the fake book, get the real book, get these so you can learn jazz standards. And then he said when he was actually playing in New York, he saw somebody get kicked out of a bar because they're like, oh, you're
because
using
they pulled out the real book.
Yeah. So
I remember that video.
Yeah. And I think I already know how you would answer this, but are you somebody who's for the use of the real book, or are you somebody who can kind of understand where they're coming from when they're like, oh, if you're using this, get out of here. You come back when you actually learn the song.
Controversial stance now. Here we go.
To quote Adams, it is a shibboleth. No, I'm halfway there. Being a player, I do understand the value of having moved beyond needing a piece of paper in front of you. I get that. Because the truth is, and I'm guilty of this as anybody else, as long as you have the music in front of you, it's kind of a crutch. You know what I mean? There will be a point at which if you are reliant on the music, I guarantee something is going to happen that's going to make that music go away, and you're screwed. It's on your sheet, it's on your stand, you're playing along, you're doing great, and then the wind picks up and blows that thing halfway across the plate, wherever you are. And then if you don't know at least the basic construction of that song, you're shot. You're really in trouble. And I get that. And if people are approaching, don't bring a real book to my gig on that. I get it. That being said, excuse me, there definitely, as an educator, I definitely feel that there is a time and a use and a place for that book, for the real book. Honestly, I've played a million jazz gigs with my real book out and just playing. because I don't know every song ever written, and if someone asks for it, you want to be able to play it,
Right.
you know. And I can play well enough reading, even sight reading these things, that if someone calls a piece in this book that I've never played before, then I can do what I would consider to be a good job playing that piece. You know what I mean? I won't train wreck it because I have this to help me. There does need to come a time and a place where you can put all that away, though. There has to be, you know. But in my eyes, to be the most complete musician, not bass player, drummer, ukulele player, guitarist, whatever you are, in order to be the most complete musician you can, you should have a working ability to do both.
Yeah.
You absolutely have. Now, can I get up there and just blast through tunes that I just have stuck in my head? Yeah, I have quite a bunch, as all four of us in this chat do right now. I mean, I think if you actually sat down and wrote down the names of every song that you know how to play, it would be a really long list, probably longer than some of you think. You know what I mean? But then there are situations you play if you want to be an out there working musician that's just not an option. A good example was, and this was actually supposed to happen last month, but of course the Rona showed up and screwed everything up. I was last year I played a gig with a pretty notorious British drag queen called Lavoie.
Oh yeah,
and over at KCC. And Lavoie was a contestant on Britain's Got Talent, and her show goes everything from like Dreamgirls to Miami Sound Machine to the musical Cabaret to Liza Minnelli music to Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart. I don't know all those songs, obviously. And
you don't know the music to the best music video ever made, Mike.
I actually did know Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Okay, right. We're still friends.
Funny enough, one of the songs I didn't know how to play was Cher's Believe. I've never been asked to play that.
Life After Love.
Yeah, I know the song. I've just never been asked to play it, so I just never had.
If you learn it, you should teach it to us, because there's a guy at our gig who keeps asking for Cher songs. Not even joking.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do any Cher song, though, I'm gonna just say, since you and Aaron played together, you should just play "I Got You, Babe."
I was gonna say, don't say "I Got You, Babe."
It's the best. Actually, the beat goes on. The beat goes on is pretty awesome. With that bass line that Aaron you could play, that's a pretty awesome song. Now here's the thing. Our show was on a Tuesday night. Lavoie flew in on a Tuesday morning.
Oh.
And the show's 2.5 hours long, with segues and these long medleys. We had like Miami Sound Machine was like a 10-minute medley all in and of itself. Then there was one which was Cher and ABBA together. And that was another like 7-8 minute medley. There's no way any of us would have ever learned it by ear in that space of time. It wouldn't have happened. We received, and even then it was a week before the gig, we received our packets in the mail, or not in email, which was PDFs of the entire show and all the music written out in notation with chords, and everything, like parts. And even then, it still took us it was me and my friend, another friend of ours, Paul Cobanis, Ron Margolis, the drummer, and Dave Yukimura and Steve Doobie on horns, and then Lavoie's music director Brian Nash was on piano. Since we're promoting all our friends, check him out, Brian Nash. He does a lot of live shows on Facebook. Throw that Venmo tip jar. He's a great pianist, and has everything written out. I mean, it really is really well timed out. The music is very, well written, it's clear, and it has to be, because we're making these, you know, you're going to play 32 bars of this song, and it's going to go through this 8-bar section where we're morphing into this other song, and you're going to change keys into this song. So I'm going to be real honest. If someone had sent me a CD of that or an MP3 of that whole show and just said, chart it out and learn it, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah, and you can't use music like at the show.
Not in the week. That would have never happened. I wouldn't have. There's very few musicians I think of that could pull something like that off.
Adam Neely could have done it.
Possibly, but watch his video on when he had to do that video game music thing. He was staring at his iPad the whole time.
Mike's got fangs.
he just put out a video like about doing they made a Broadway show in like 24 hours or something, and so he had to transpose all the music like overnight. Like he had to do 4 songs or something, like the
4 musicals.
4 musicals.
4 whole musicals.
And the composer gave them the songs, and he had to write out everything too. So he is one of those guys.
Did you look at how empty his eyes were at the end of that?
Sunken.
Yeah, so the point of that is that in that sense, no, that's when my ability to read music at a high level saved my butt.
Yeah.
Because immediately I could go right into reading the music and knowing what it was supposed to be, so that, because when they showed up that day, we got to the theater at about 12. Lavoie and Brian got there about 1:30. We started rehearsal at 2 for a 7:00 show. and that 4.5 hours we had before that was all we had. You know, in order to get this show 100% right. That's really tough. So, you know, at a certain point, it depends on the kind of gig you're doing. But my advice is always go ahead, you know, learn both. There's nothing it's not gonna hurt you. It's not gonna hurt you to know how to do both.
I think the reason why people are so against one or the other is because people use that as like a crutch to only rely on one or the other, right? So like when people use sheet music as a crutch, and like you go to something and they're like, oh well, this is a really easy song, I can teach you it in 5 minutes, but then they're like, oh, I can't play it without sheet music though. Then it's like, oh, you should, like, as a you as a musician, you kind of want to get at least that far with not needing sheet music or not needing to rely on something. And then on the other hand, like sheet music could probably save you in these kinds of situations where it's like you only have this much time to learn it. Here's the music written out instead of just listening to it or whatever.
A lot of it is time and place, and the like what Mike was saying is the situation. If you're playing like for, you know, if you're like a wedding singer, for example, like having music there, like is not bad, because people are going to ask you for like different things, you know, like, oh, can you play this song? Not even just, you know, like just the people in the audience. The bride is going to ask you, you know, like, oh, this is our song, can you play this? And you're not going to play that song, right? And
you're going to play that song.
Yeah, you're going to play that song. So I think in some places, I think it's okay. Or if you're playing at a bar, even sometimes I feel like, but if you're, you know, but if you're an established musician already, like, if you're like a Bruno Mars, for example, you know, like he's not gonna have it at like the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like he's not, or his musicians are not gonna have it at the Super Bowl, or he's, you know, like it just, I think it's
iPad stand.
Yeah, exactly, iPad stands and stuff. Like or if you have like a set that you're already doing, a set that you play all the time. Like I think if you have a set that you're playing all the time, and having music in front of you, like that just kind of takes away from, you know, from the set, if I'm an audience, you know, like watcher and stuff. So it really just depends. I can do both, but I think there are more times that I try not to. Like if we're gonna play like a festival, for example, and we're like Aaron and I are headlining, you know, like, and I don't think people want to see our faces buried like in like music stands, you know, and have it there. It's not like people are gonna ask us for requests anyways. So that's like where the situation kind of comes, you know.
Right.
Yeah. I think like with using it as a music education tool too, there's like you see this kind of come as a trend because like there's a real book that came and like people really wanted to use it, and then people were like, oh, don't use it. And then like Ultimate Guitar too, it's like you kind of see the same thing where Ultimate Guitar came up and everybody was like, oh, it's a great resource. And then all the online music teachers were like, don't use Ultimate Guitar, it's a terrible resource, like stop using it. And I think it's just because like is people like see that as the easy way, and then they use it so much that it's like, oh, you're not really learning other musical fundamentals though, like using your ear to hear what should come next, or building up your musical instincts to like know like, oh, I don't know this song, but I kind of know this chord pattern, or I know this idea, so I can kind of know where it's gonna lead anyways. And that's like something that people, or like something that we find is that when people use only sheet music, they don't learn phrasing very well. And we can tell, like, we see a lot of people who play, and then we're like, did you play along with the music, or did you just use the sheet music? And they go like, oh, I just use the sheet music. And it's like, well, you should try play along with the actual song, because you'll learn like things that the sheet music can't tell you. You know, you'll learn how to express the song a little bit better.
Or tabs without like the musical notation on it. It's just tabs, numbers.
So here's my controversial one for this one. That is the one version of written music that I absolutely hate.
Tabs.
Yeah. I think tabs is probably the dumbest thing to be dependent on.
Let me look up an email that Mike sent me before saying, hey, can you give me the tabs to this song?
And I know the reason I know Aldrine's BSing me is that nobody has ever gotten that email from me.
It's like Aldrine is wearing a wire, and he's like, "Can you say that one more time? Right into say that right into my chest, please."
Talk right to this flower on my shirt.
I knew this would come in handy 14 years later, Mike.
The reason I think about that is because the reason I say that is because, and this is the same thing I have as an issue with people who only have like their sheet music is basically lyrics and chords. It doesn't teach you much like Kahai said, it doesn't teach you phrasing. There's no actual melody involved. All you're figuring out with a tab is where did this guy put his finger. That's it. That's all it teaches you. And well, cool. If you have the song available for you to listen to, excuse me.
Bless you. Whoa. Speaking of Rona.
If you have the song available, the tab will help because they'll put your hand in the right place. But after that, you know what I mean? Like I could give you a song that, like if I could give Aldrine a song that he already knows, but if I don't tell him it's this song, and I put it in front of him in tab, it'll still take him a few minutes to figure out, oh, I already know this song, you know, because there's not enough information there.
Yeah.
You know?
I think like the best, the ideal situation, right, is that you have the sheet music or tab with the actual recorded music so you can hear what it's supposed to sound like. Because you can't get all the information from one or the other. You can get pretty close with like really good sheet music, but it's still not going to give you 100% of what you need to play the song. You know, you still need to kind of have a idea of what it should sound like.
Right. Now here's the one caveat about that. Every classical orchestra on the planet would disagree with that.
Yeah.
Because now here's the thing. We're talking about people who are playing at some of the highest levels around. Also, generally, when you're talking about that, they are reading music that is written by someone who's very precise about what they've written down. You know, that would be my one exception to that statement. So if I took a piece of music that I'd never seen before, as a matter of fact, we'll go back to another Adam Ely video. Kahai, did you see the 5 Composers 1 theme video?
Yeah.
So that's a good example. Realizing what those guys had in the short amount of time, and yet they were able to do it so well from just the beginning.
Yeah.
Now, would your average Joe sitting at home looking at Ultimate Guitar and a tab be able to do that? No, they certainly wouldn't be able to do that. You know,
I think classical musicians though too, they also have other things to fill in the gaps for a musical, you know, like that, or like how they should play the music, because that's why they have composers in front of them, right? To tell them like, oh, you guys in this time you guys need to raise your volume or lower your volume dynamics.
Yeah. The instructions are in the music. That's also what I meant about like someone who wrote something very specific. You know, like a good composer is actually going to write all that stuff in. If he wants it louder, he's going to put markings to say this is where you get louder. And a good musician reading it is going to see that instruction and be able to execute.
Yeah,
you know? More rubato, Mike. More rubato.
Yeah, and even in like that Adam Neely video you mentioned too, like they got his music right, and then the bass player actually like didn't quite know how to play what he wrote, so they kind of had to be like, I think this is what he means, like, because it kind of sounds like that. And then afterwards, Adam Neely himself was like, oh, I totally forgot to add in a note or something, like being more specific about that. I'm glad they figured that out, but that is what I meant. So yeah,
all right, and then that's the level of, that's also kind of that idea of their level of musicianship.
Yeah.
You know, because there would be a bunch of people who at that point the rehearsal would stop.
All right, so
they'd be like, I don't know what to do.
So because we're nearing the end already, and we didn't get to answer any of the live chat questions. Is there any questions from the live chat to just kind of like to so that we can lightning round this, Kahai?
We
only really answered one question.
Yeah, we actually didn't really have questions from the chat because like people were like, when we were talking about real books and music and everything, that's what they were talking about in the chat.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that nobody felt like they were ignored or whatever.
Yeah, we actually had a chat from last week though that you might be able to answer. So this is from Jim from Tampa, not Jim from Australia. So he said,
Jim from Oasis.
Yeah. So he said, I have like a E flat minor to a F7, but I want to find like a chord to finish off that phrase to make it sound like a Spanish or Mexican song. What chord would you suggest for that? So E flat minor.
E flat minor.
Yeah.
To the F7?
Yeah.
I would go to the B flat minor.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would just be like the
4-5-1.
Yeah, 4-5-1. There it is.
Yeah, there you go.
If you wanted to make it sound more flamenco-ish or Spanishy, yeah, it'd be B flat minor. You're in that key anyway. That would be the one.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Next up.
Well, that was it.
Next one. Come on.
Yes. Yeah. Let's do this. Yeah, let's double team this, Mike.
That was the only question that we had for that last week. But
any other like emails that we got or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think we actually covered, with Mike answering how to do jazz chords, I think we covered pretty much our back end of emails. So
yeah, and I didn't want to stop because the conversation was great. Like the entire time, I was like, we talking about different things, and I didn't want to disrupt the flow or anything. But I also didn't want to ignore like if we did have questions in the chat and stuff. So that's cool. All right. Well, it is almost 2:00, Mike. Tell us what is.
Oh wait, I actually wanted to add in just for people who are interested in those like the rhythm changes stuff. We have in the marketplace in Ukulele Underground, like kind of speaking of jazz light, we have Matt's strumming course. There's a section called jazz. I think it was jazz and swing strumming, and he does kind of like, he shows you kind of a progression based off of rhythm changes that you could use with the jazz and swing strumming. So if people want to check that out, it's in the Ukulele Underground marketplace, the ultimate ukulele strumming course, jazz and swing strumming section, and it's available for not free. The red book.
I like the red book.
Yeah,
Ah.
but we'll put a link to that one too. If you just if you don't know anything about jazz and kind of want to ease your way into it, it's really like simple stuff that can kind of get you going for basic ukulele, getting into jazz.
I think,
Okay,
or I was gonna say, I think the like if you buy all of Matt's classes too, that's like a better deal because you get like everything besides just that one class too. Yeah, and it costs
it's a great
more,
package.
but then you get a bigger discount for like buying them all individually. So yeah, you might want to do that.
I was gonna ask Mike because you know all like the musicians here on Kauai and stuff, and you're probably friends with them all on Facebook and Instagram. Since not a lot of people, I get a lot of like emails like, "Hey, we want to come down to Kauai and stuff, but like didn't because of the situation, like we can't come down anymore." And I know people, and you mentioned earlier that people are kind of like jamming on on social media and kind of just like tip them and stuff. Are there any musicians that you would we would recommend for people to kind of check out and listen to?
In general, or just our Kauai guys?
Mostly Kauai guys, but I guess you can just name people in general because people are just kind of wanting music and live stuff right now.
Okay.
So is there any virtual way to transport them over to Kauai?
Well, the first one that comes to my mind is someone who'd be familiar to Ukulele Underground viewers. Kavika actually does one every couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
He has a Venmo tip jar. Frank Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing one every Thursday.
Mm-hmm. And do you know their net handles?
We can figure it out.
Yeah. We'll link it. We'll link it.
Yeah. Who else? Like I said, Brian. DJ Yaris, I think, is doing some every now and then.
Oh, nice.
He just did a song with McKenna.
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna promote that too.
Oh, right on, man.
Cavaiola and McKenna Pasqua, check it out. It's on you. Well, it's on YouTube. I forget the name of the song.
McKenna did a song, with us, so people should know McKenna based on our lessons. Yeah, the last Christmas, Mike played the bass. She sang the main part.
Gosh, the funny part is a lot of guys are not really doing it for tips.
Yeah,
they're just doing it on a high level. Chick Corea is actually on every few weeks.
Speaking of jazz, oh snap!
So jazz. Chick Corea gets online and he plays like 45-minute jazz solo piano set.
That's cool.
Just cause.
I love his version of Spain.
He plays it really well.
Yeah.
Almost like he wrote it. It's
like
weird.
He knows it. Like he knows it.
I bet he doesn't look at a real book.
Did he
That's
come
how he's
to you,
been able
Aldrine,
to play it so accurately.
In the middle of the night, knock on your door? It's like, oh, you need to tell me how to play Spain.
I'd be like, Chick, I just can't wait till the morning, right?
Yeah.
I feel like this is gonna be one of the, like we were talking before. Eventually you're gonna have to do it as a whiteboard request.
Was that Spain?
37-week series.
Yeah. we can just get Abe, like just give him like a case of beer or something. Like, dude, can you teach us for us?
Abe Labramas, I got a case of Stella Artois for you.
Oh snap! Oh, okay, green bottles. That's what he likes.
I actually know that's his favorite beer.
Okay, good to know.
When he comes,
offer himself to do Spain.
From the beginning, when he came to the jazz festival, we would always have like, I guess, Coronas and like Budweisers and stuff like Bud Lights and the thing. And he was just I was probably like a second or third year, so this was like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably where we really started hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
So he just was like looking, and when someone's looking in the fridge and they just got that look like,
I want that purple stuff.
And I was like, what's up, man? You need something? He said, like, I really would love, this is all the beer we got. He's like, yeah, why? What did you want? He said, I really love Stella. So I ran over to City Liquor, grabbed him a 6-pack and brought it back. And That was it. We've been,
You guys were best friends.
after that, it was that and
Besties.
Pietro's Pizza that made us that bonded us together.
All right,
Nice.
yeah, kids don't drink alcohol or anything. Kids, like it's
No, Abe was of complete age when he did this.
Yes, as
Yeah.
long as do not. Yeah, there it is, Mike. There you go. You're an educator. You should tell these kids.
and drink responsibly.
Yeah, drink responsibly.
Drink responsibly, and preferably not at all if you're underage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. With that, on a lighthearted note, we're going to bid you all adieu. How do you say it, Mike?
Adieu.
Oh yeah, there it is. There it
Yeah.
is. So, thanks so much for tuning
So
in.
long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.
You're tuning in to Thursday Live Lessons on behalf of myself, Magic Mike Odo, Kahai the Legend, Aaron the Voice. We'll see you folks next week. Have a great one. Aloha.